Hello and welcome to Recognizing Member Accomplishments, a webinar for VISTA sponsors and leaders. Today, we're going to get into the why, what, and when of VISTA member recognition, and we'll leave you with strategies for how you can recognize member accomplishments. I'm your host, Eric Powell, a training specialist with AmeriCorps VISTA in Washington, D.C. I'm delighted to introduce you to our presenter, Dr. Erin Barnhart. Erin is an internationally recognized expert in domestic and international service, service learning, and volunteer engagement. She's developed and delivered effective engagement tools, trainings, and resources for volunteers, interns, students, field professionals, and service organizations worldwide. She's also a proud AmeriCorps alum. Erin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here today to share some tips on how you can meaningfully recognize the accomplishments of your VISTA members. So we're going to start out by looking at how we're going to spend our time together today. In terms of recognition, we will begin by defining what recognition is. Next, we'll identify the why, what, when, and how of recognizing VISTA members and their accomplishments. Then we'll highlight the process of recognition, including considerations that you'll want to take into account. Lastly, we'll explore methods for recognizing members' accomplishments, and then we'll close with resources for further learning. So it is important to begin with an overview of what we mean by recognition. But before we even get to that, I'd like to hear from you. So I'm going to ask Eric to lead us in a short activity.
Thanks so much, Erin. And it's a fairly straightforward activity. We'll be using the chat panel as you may have already been using. So if you don't have it open, select the speech bubble icon at the bottom of the screen. And we're asking you to answer this question: how do you define recognition? Go ahead and type your response. Please make sure on the drop-down menu you select everyone so we can all see your response. And we'll give you a moment to think about and type your answer to the question, how do you define recognition? Well, thank you for the responses. I see them flying in. I see a couple that I'll highlight here. I define recognition as providing timely feedback and celebrating the small wins with the larger team. Absolutely. Giving attention outside of a group, which makes sense. You're not just recognizing that one person, but you're really acknowledging them outside into a larger group. Then another one I see is recognition can be defined as appreciation, value, and can take various forms to really show someone that you care about what they're doing and what they've accomplished. And I'm seeing a lot more coming in. Erin, I know as we're looking at them, we're trying to assess them and read them, but do you see any that stand out to you or any overarching themes?
Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of things repeated here and there, including different kinds of scale, recognizing folks at an individual level, as well as within a group or an organization. And I'm also seeing lots of focus on accomplishments, really pointing out and honing in on what people are contributing as part of the act of recognition. Fabulous. Well, so thank you for getting us going, Eric. We're going to continue to define recognition, and folks, please feel free to continue sharing in the chat there. And part of doing that definition includes talking about gratitude and appreciation, because it is important to think about their similarities and their differences. So let's take a look at how these three terms intersect. Gratitude involves feeling and then expressing your thanks to someone, especially if they did something that was kind or helpful. Appreciation is feeling and expressing thanks, just like gratitude, plus feeling and expressing a sense of value for what the person has done or contributed. And recognition is one step further, feeling and expressing gratitude, having a sense of appreciation, and sharing or acknowledging how a person's actions have made a difference. Another important distinction is that you can feel and express gratitude and appreciation for something that you may not really want or need. For both of these terms, your goal is to make the person who took action feel seen, showing that you feel kindness toward them for their efforts and that their efforts had value. Recognition, however, also implies that what they have done or contributed was needed and has had an impact. Here's an example to illustrate the point. Imagine you told a neighbor that you needed to clean out a room in your house for a sick family member who would be staying with you. If that neighbor then helped you get the room ready, you'd want to express gratitude for their kindness, appreciation for their efforts, and recognition of how their actions have made a big difference for you and your family. It's the impact that warrants recognition in addition to gratitude and appreciation. Okay, so recognition, as we're defining it here, is the process of acknowledging someone's positive contributions, accomplishments, and efforts towards a goal. It's a way to demonstrate how someone has made a difference and why it is valued. So with these definitions in mind, let's talk about why it's important to recognize accomplishments, in this case, the actions and contributions of your VISTA members. First, a small bit of research to set the stage. A 2021 study by the Harvard Business Review found that recognizing social workers through simple, accessible methods led to staff feeling significantly more valued, more recognized for their work, and more supported by their organization. They also reported positive impacts on subjective well-being, belonging, intrinsic motivation, and lower sickness absence rates. Citing previous findings, the researchers noted that when employees are more satisfied with their organization, they are more productive and less likely to leave, and that recognizing and empowering employees can increase motivation and improve performance across the organization. This is just one example, and there are many more research studies out there on the power of recognition. But in short, recognition is impactful. It can lead to such benefits as higher morale, greater productivity, and a greater sense of well-being among team members. These are all important outcomes for your VISTA members and for your organization and community as well.
Aaron, I love the research you just shared and the context, and I appreciate it because it fits really well with this next question, which is based on your experience with AmeriCorps VISTA members who typically only serve 1 year. So the question is, why else do you think it's important to recognize the accomplishments of your members? Maybe an obvious question, or maybe you need a minute to think, which we'll give you. But thinking about why else do you think it's important to recognize the accomplishments and achievements of your members? And we'll give you a minute to respond in the chat. Thank you. These responses are so right on point. It'll give them a sense of belonging and value. Those are very, very powerful words. They feel seen and a part of the organization, which is so critical for an AmeriCorps VISTA member who may be new to the community and maybe it's their first time professional experience and they really don't know anyone. So to be seen and part of the organization is absolutely essential. Recognizing contributions of team members, makes them feel motivated, but it also shows progress as part of overall organization goals and shows others why it's important. So other people who are perhaps VISTA project stakeholders and beyond can see the importance of what the members are achieving and contributing. Aaron, what comes to your mind?
Well, I'm so excited to see these responses, and I agree they are right on point with some of the things we're going to cover during our time together today. I'm especially loving how I'm seeing folks recognize the importance and the impacts for the individual, things like being seen and feeling connected and their own growth, and those impacts for the organization, how that creates progress towards a goal. It enhances team dynamics. It creates that sense of connection and shared mission within the organization. And in fact, that's what we're going to talk about next, is how these benefits, these impacts of recognition are for the individual and for the organization. All right, so starting with that, we're going to go into even more detail on why recognition matters. And we're going to start by talking about why it is important for the individual VISTA member, keeping in mind that many of these benefits are not mutually exclusive. If it benefits a VISTA member, it likely also benefits the organization and vice versa. So specifically, we're going to talk about human dignity, impact, value, motivation, and retention. So members matter to us as human beings and because of the important contributions they bring to our organization. Their contributions also matter to themselves. We understand that their work is often hard and that they may experience frequent challenges. And that's why recognition is so important. It helps to keep them inspired, motivated, and satisfied. It's also about making sure they know how much the organization and the community appreciate their efforts and their presence. Now, recognition, as we defined previously, goes beyond appreciation and gratitude in that it also indicates why and how someone's actions have had an impact. Recognizing a person affirms their specific role in our organizations and communities by highlighting the significant impact they have individually, as well as the collective impact they have on something they are passionate about. Recognition also emphasizes the value of the members' activities in terms of both their own professional development and the overall benefit to the organization. This makes recognition especially important at times when it may be difficult for members to readily see this value themselves. For example, a VISTA member might be deep in their day-to-day work, or possibly even experiencing a more challenging period in their project, or even feeling disillusioned in some way. In these cases, recognition can provide a big picture perspective of the value they bring, showing them how their efforts matter to the mission of the organization and the well-being of the community. As you heard before, research has found that recognizing folks often leads to higher motivation. We also know that VISTA members come to us with their own motivations to serve. So recognition provides us with an opportunity to tailor how we recognize members based on their own individual motivations, expressing our gratitude and highlighting their impact in a way that aligns with their motivations and ideally further boosts them. Here's an example. Say a member has chosen to serve because they want to build a career in your specific field. You can focus your recognition efforts on how their individual skills, abilities, and perspective are well suited to this space, or how they have developed to become more effective. This will be even more meaningful to them than just appreciating their time or expressing gratitude for their effort. The fifth and final reason why it's important to recognize individual VISTA members is retention. Both internal and external methods of recognition, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, can contribute to effective retention. For example, if a VISTA member feels supported, they are more likely to remain in their position for their full term of service. If they successfully complete their project while receiving that same level of support, this may lead to the member wanting to serve for another year, either as a member again or as a leader. It might even inspire them to continue working for the organization in a staff capacity, which helps to retain their experience and talent within the organization.
Let's pause here so we can hear from you. Out of the 5 reasons that Aaron just mentioned of why recognizing accomplishments matters so much to members, which of these benefits do you feel resonate most with your individual VISTA members? You can only select one response, but we do know that all of these are important, but we're asking which one do you feel is most important for your team to benefit from? Is it human dignity, impact, value, motivation, or retention? You'll see a poll appear on the screen in just a minute, and we'll ask you to select your response, and please make sure to click submit when you're done. We'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, we'll give you just a couple more seconds. If you're still submitting your response, again, you can only select one and make sure to hit submit. Give you about 5 more seconds, and then we'll briefly review the results. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's close the poll. And the results are relatively even between 15 and 30% of each, but the highest result was impact at 30%, then followed by retention at 25%, and then motivation, value, and human dignity are all tied for 15%. So as we mentioned before, there is no wrong answer, but we certainly appreciate you for participating in this just to get a gauge on what you think is most important to your members. But it's also great to take time to really get to know what resonates with your members as you work with them and learn how they appreciate being recognized.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Eric. So let's turn our attention now to your organization. How does recognizing individual VISTA members benefit VISTA projects, sponsors, and leaders? Organizational benefits of recognition include organizational culture, reputation, community buy-in, the sustainability of your VISTA program, future VISTA recruitment, and connection. You heard about how recognizing individuals can lead to greater motivation and morale. This can also create a better organizational culture, including higher morale and motivation among others on your staff, a renewed sense of purpose, and greater satisfaction with activities and outcomes. Recognizing VISTA members can lead to a culture that is even more supportive and impactful, with higher and more sustained levels of performance and commitment across the team. Recognizing your VISTA members in public ways can also create or amplify positive perception of your organization within your community. And expressing gratitude and impact offers visibility into how the organization values and treats the members of their team. It shows that you are invested in the personal and professional growth of VISTA members at your organization. This, in turn, can bolster the reputation of your organization as one that both values the contributions of your people and expresses recognition in a transparent way. Similarly to reputation, when sponsors and leaders explicitly share project and organization successes with the community, this can increase public awareness of the organization's mission and services more broadly, which encourages higher community engagement and buy-in. This increased awareness of your VISTA program via your recognition efforts, both publicly and internally among your organization's staff and board members, can lead to greater awareness of your mission and efforts among partner organizations too. These partners may then be interested in creating a VISTA project of their own or collaborating with your organization. Simultaneously, as your organization becomes more known for recognizing VISTA members, word may spread within the service community as well, boosting the reputation of your program and organization. Thus, you can solidify the long-term sustainability of your program by building awareness among potential VISTA members who may then seek to join your team. Which, of course, is related to our next benefit, recruitment. Success stories are extremely helpful for future member recruitment. They highlight the impact your VISTA members have had and put a spotlight on how you value and recognize these contributions. As a result, they also allow candidates to learn about the kinds of impact they may have at your organization, as well as how VISTA service can help them grow personally and professionally. Plus, your current VISTA members who have experienced effective recognition may be more motivated to share their story with others. This makes them powerful ambassadors for your organization or program. Lastly, practicing recognition helps to connect or reconnect organizational staff and community members to what your VISTA members are doing. While hopefully your stakeholders are already aware of your VISTA program and members, recognizing your members reminds stakeholders of the important work your team does and highlights the VISTA members who make such an impact.
Okay, it's your turn now. We're going to ask you another chat question, and we'd like to know, how has the recognition of member accomplishments specifically benefited your organization and your community? We'll give you an example to get you thinking. So perhaps you and your project recognized your member accomplishments in a community newsletter by showcasing what they did and providing pictures and details. Or maybe the telling of your VISTA project story and your member achievements inspired a couple of local organizations to contact you and want to support your project with a new partnership that would benefit the whole project. If you don't know the answer to this question yet, that's okay. It might take some time to think, but I do encourage you and your project to think about this now and into the future in terms of what impact do you think the recognizing of your member accomplishments will make on the organization and community. But we'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and submit a response in the chat if you have one now, and we'll be right back. I'll say quickly going back to the example we gave of the newsletter, sometimes one of the ways it benefits the organization and the community is that more people hear about the VISTA program simply by talking about what your members do, and they're more connected to the organization as a result. And I'm seeing comments in the chat, awards given to coworkers during an annual dinner, which is great. And I encourage anyone to think about even further, so they get the awards, how does that impact the organization and the community? Or if you get a grant, what specific impact does that make on the organization? How can you use that to really benefit all the work that you're doing? It's incredible to see how seemingly small things, although recognition is not that small, but seemingly small things can make a major difference, not just in the member, but in everyone who's part of the project. And Aaron, I know you've had some thoughts or experience in this question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That success story aspect of being able to share your recognition with the public, it really does all of the things we just discussed. It raises that visibility, it makes people more aware of what you're doing. Positivity breeds positivity. So receiving an award from a fellow organization, part of recognizing your VISTA members and putting that out into the community means that people know what you do, what your impact is locally, and then the community sees that too. So just really powerful impacts here for your organization, all stemming from recognizing your VISTA members. Thank you, folks, for sharing those examples. All right, so we're going to move on to this next section here, which is now that you know why recognizing accomplishments benefits members, sponsors, supervisors, leaders, and organizations, we're going to begin to look at what to recognize. First and foremost, take time to recognize the achievements of your VISTA members. These can be small or large, quantitative or qualitative. Examples might be acknowledging the progress towards completing VAD objectives, such as developing a new data collection system, coordinating a fundraising campaign, or recruiting a new community partner organization. Recognition activities can also highlight progress made toward a goal, such as a target amount for a fundraising campaign. This provides context that shows others how impressive the numbers are and the impact of the members' efforts. Now, for each of these categories, I'm also going to talk very briefly about why it is important to recognize each of these kinds of accomplishments. In this case, it's important because members put a lot of effort into their tasks. Recognition and related motivation and morale may increase the overall quality of their deliverables. Recognition also provides an opportunity for members to reflect on the impact of their efforts and how this impact ties into their individual motivations to serve. Now, recognizing how members have overcome challenges can look like highlighting new lessons learned or processes developed as a result of getting past roadblocks or errors. This includes the personal and professional growth in knowledge, flexibility, and adaptability they displayed when presented with barriers to success. By centering the ability to overcome these challenges using a lens of recognition, we can also help them view future difficulties as opportunities for growth and development. Recognizing how they've handled challenges is important because it can help them it can help motivate them to persevere while also acknowledging how they developed new skills and practices in the process. Professional victories to highlight might involve the completion of an activity that required significant planning, like a focus group or survey, a campaign, or the implementation of a new program. And recognizing these professional victories can assist in improving retention, as people like to stay where they feel their efforts are valued. This can also strengthen interpersonal relations between organization staff and VISTA members. Similarly, recognizing personal achievements might involve acknowledging relationships developed by members in the local community, or even personal achievements like completing a 5K race. Identifying and highlighting personal achievements demonstrates that VISTA supervisors and sponsors are invested in their members as people and members of our shared community, not just results and organizational outcomes. Another important category of accomplishment to recognize involves some metrics. These might be the number of community partnerships established or the number of volunteers recruited. They can be expressed through quantitative measures like the amount of money raised through cash or in-kind donations. For example, you could write, Sarah wrote 3 successful grant applications for us this quarter, securing critical funding for the expansion of our food bank. These can also be qualitative elements like stories shared by community members or clients. An example here could be saying, Sarah represented our organization at the farmers market every Saturday this summer, introducing hundreds of people to our programs and services. A community member even called our office to express gratitude for Sarah's presence at the market, as well as her excitement about our efforts to fight hunger in our community. These examples show how metrics effectively highlight a member's impact on the community, and they can help the community understand VISTA members' contributions, strengthening connections to VISTA and your organization. This visibility can then boost recruitment and show current and potential members how their short-term actions may lead to project sustainability. Now, our last category of accomplishments to discuss today is recognizing individual skills and talents, which you can acknowledge during several different phases of their service. At the start of their term, you might highlight the skills and talents they are bringing to the table and identify what they want to learn during their service. Then later in their term, you can return to these skills and talents to discuss how the member has grown during their time with your organization. You might discuss how these abilities align with the member's motivation to serve and their plans for post-service personal and professional growth. With members' permission, you can even share some of their unique abilities and perspectives with the public. This demonstrates why it is valuable to have VISTA members join your team and how they contribute their specific skills towards your shared goals. And personalizing this recognition is important because it provides an opportunity to tie their accomplishments to their professional development vision and goals, all while amplifying the talents of your team to your community. Okay, so we've talked about why recognition is important and what we can recognize. Let's talk now about when to recognize members. At the very beginning of VISTA member service, you can set the stage for a culture of recognition at your organization. Recognize the accomplishments VISTA members have already achieved by completing a successful application and a competitive interview process. You chose them among many options to fill the position. They've also completed their orientation and onboarding by this time, which is another achievement to acknowledge. Recognize and thank them for starting their year off strong by arriving on your team committed and ready to serve the community. Throughout their term of service, there will also be natural benchmarks where you can identify, assess, and recognize their accomplishments. This might be monthly, quarterly, or even halfway through the year. These benchmarks can also be tied to dates specific to your work. For example, an organization might already follow a semester or a term schedule with which these benchmarks align. Acknowledge their progress so far, including everything they've already accomplished, and talk about future opportunities to learn, grow, and have an impact. Now remember, recognition works best as an ongoing practice, rather than something done only around key deliverables or dates. This reinforces your organization's commitment to valuing your VISTA members, modeling that recognition is a core part of serving with your organization. It also sets an expectation about recognition that current and future VISTA members should have when they serve with your team. Create a mindset of recognition and seek periodic opportunities to acknowledge, appreciate, and recognize your team throughout the year. Lastly, speaking of natural dates for recognition, the end of the member's term of service is an excellent and important time to recognize their impact. Mark the completion of their term of service by going into detail about what they have achieved, highlighting accomplishments throughout the year. In short, provide a summary of what they've contributed and why it matters. You may even want to take it a step further and contact the member after they finish service to send a final thank you message. This could include a full list of their accomplishments and how they help to move both the project and your organization's mission forward.
There's certainly a lot of options when it comes to selecting a time to celebrate a member's service, specifically within their 365 days of service. We know that there's probably other occasions too, like celebrating birthdays or holidays, or as Aaron mentioned, even personal milestones, personal achievements. So let's hear from you again, and we're going to be using the chat again. And this time the question we're asking is, when or on what occasions have you decided to celebrate a member's service? And again, this could be a specific date and time. It could be a category such as in the first couple of months of their service, but we are asking when specifically have you decided to celebrate a member's service and their accomplishments? Again, please use the chat panel. Make sure you select everyone from the drop-down menu and feel free to share your response. So I see several individuals are mentioning birthdays and holidays, work anniversary, which for a member, I think that could work out well. It could be their, once they're 6 months into their service and towards the end when they're about to complete. I see during AmeriCorps week, which is a great time in March because we're celebrating AmeriCorps and all things that connect to AmeriCorps. So celebrating AmeriCorps members and all that they've contributed toward the greater AmeriCorps family is absolutely amazing. I see Deborah mentions organizations having an end of year celebration where it sounds like they acknowledge success in the organization, but also an opportunity to specifically call out VISTA members and recognize what they've accomplished. Marissa mentions the same thing. Etienne mentions having a self-care day and celebrating members that way, enabling them to know how important it is to take care of themselves, because in order for them to succeed and accomplish more, they have to take care of themselves and know what they are capable of. Aaron, I know there's a lot more comments coming in, but any thoughts from you?
Well, I'm loving seeing the mix of those that are date specific, like a holiday, those that are outcome specific, like the end of the term or the completion of a project, as well as just the ongoing, like creating that self-care moment or making sure they know at any given, moment or day on an ad hoc basis, how appreciated they are and how much of an impact they have. I'm also loving the range of where they're doing these acts of recognition during board meetings, during celebrations, one-on-one. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about next. So it's exciting to see the range of ways and times that folks are doing this act of recognition. So thank you for sharing them. All right, so as I just said, we are actually going to spend this last part of our time together discussing the how of recognition. Specifically, we're going to look at it in two parts: process and methods. This is where we'll get into the details of how you can start practicing recognition at your organization. And we're going to start first with the process. This is where you'll consider internal procedural elements like time, budget, and other factors that will influence which methods of recognition might be the best fit for you and your team. Our first process consideration is budget. Do you have funds allocated or available for recognition activities? Or would you primarily be seeking free or low-cost methods to demonstrate your appreciation? Examples here might be a recognition event or a party, which could require a substantial budget, or a personal thank you card, which would cost much less. Your next consideration is how much time you and others on your staff can and should dedicate to recognition. Now remember, recognition of accomplishments should not be a one-time thing or an afterthought, so you must actively make time for it. Now, as an example, two possible written ways of demonstrating appreciation are a handwritten note or a letter of recommendation. These require very different levels of time and attention, so consider how much you have available when you're deciding on your recognition methods. Next, who will be involved in this process? Keep in mind, as you're thinking about who else should practice recognition, that the answer is everyone. Everyone on your organization's team should be practicing recognition with one another, but especially those in management positions. This can lead to it being easier and more seamless to recognize member accomplishments. But again, it shouldn't only be supervisors or leaders who recognize members, so consider who will be involved, including if and how peer recognition might be a valuable addition. We talked a lot about the why of recognition earlier, including the benefits to individual VISTA members, your organization, and your community. Consider this now as you think about the goals of your recognition activities. Which methods will align best with the types of benefits that would be most valuable to your current members? Which might be most important to you as an organization or to your community? Determining this will help you decide which methods of recognition you most want to prioritize. For example, if your organization wants to specifically emphasize or spotlight its reputation, public-facing recognition may be most impactful. If you're primarily seeking to improve individual member morale, internal, direct, and more personal methods of recognition might be best. Finally, if you're hoping to address retention, then recognition tied to professional development may be more motivating. Lastly, it's an important part of the process to discuss personal preferences for recognition with your VISTA members. To determine these, meet with your individual members one-on-one or create an online survey to collect their feedback. You'll see examples of questions you can ask included in the session handout. Share with them why your organization values recognition as a way of amplifying the efforts of VISTA members, and then discuss some of the recognition methods that you would potentially engage. Then be sure to document their preferences to help you implement an informed practice of recognition. Asking about their preferences is important because individual members may find different methods of recognition more meaningful than others. Think of it like a social currency. If I'm seeking professional development skills, personalized notes and thank yous won't help me much. However, a letter of recommendation would be much more valuable since it is a tangible thing that I can use to help further my career. Another important reason to talk about preferences is that some VISTA members may have safety or security concerns with having their name, photo, and/or their location posted online. And even those who are okay with external public recognition may still have preferences for where and how this happens. Overall, the goal here is to align your recognition methods with what they identify as most meaningful, what you can reasonably offer, and their own motivations to serve, all while also being aware of and honoring any concerns about members' safety or comfort when it comes to public recognition.
We're going to get your fingers warmed up in the chat again, so get ready. What we want to know is what your VISTA project needs to consider when deciding how to recognize your VISTA members. Yes, this question is a little broad intentionally. We want you to branch outside and think, but what else does your VISTA project need to consider? Aaron talked about the budget and people and goals. What other factors are necessary when deciding how to recognize VISTA members? Please respond in the chat and make sure you send your response to everyone. Seeing a lot of really good responses coming in. Kim mentions organizational norms, which kind of goes to the point of what does the organization do for its staff? Not that you can't do things differently for VISTA members because it is a unique one-year position, but it's a good idea to see how does the organization deal with recognizing people in general so you can consider how to recognize the VISTA members as well. Deborah mentions goals. That could be organizational goals as well as personal member goals. Anne mentions how to involve the neighborhood that we serve, which is absolutely great. The community members, the stakeholders, how to incorporate them into the process of recognizing members, which also connects to sustainability, which is a whole nother webinar topic. And then I saw Pamela mentions company policies as well as core values. These are great, and I'm seeing other responses come in that are really, really on point. Erin, what comes to mind for you as you see these responses?
Well, I appreciate how much folks are really giving this thought and considering all of the various aspects of what they need to consider as they think about these various methods of recognition. So everything from those internal aspects like the organizational norms, how it ties to our mission, and then also those external ones of how to engage the neighborhood, thinking through why we're sharing, who our target is, what our goal is about the recognition, and everything from policies to practices. So I encourage you to continue this line of thought. I'm loving seeing all of these responses here. And as you get into the practice of preparing for either building or expanding your toolkit of recognition methods, these are exactly the kinds of things that you'll want to keep in mind, because that's the way to make sure that your recognition practices are really intentional and impactful for your members, your organization, and your community. So again, thank you everyone for sharing these. These are terrific. All right, so our last bit of time together today, we are going to spend it thinking about and talking about specific methods for how you can recognize your VISTA members, including some ideas and suggestions that may work well for you and your VISTA members. There are many great personal ways to demonstrate recognition. These are especially meaningful for members who prefer something less public and more personalized. You may want to consider giving members a handwritten note expressing gratitude for their service and appreciation and singling out their unique contributions to the team. There are also great free and low-cost digital options for thank you notes, including virtual greeting cards and things like kudo boards. You can also offer a verbal or written acknowledgement of an achievement or a challenge that they overcame. Or another creative fun option is to place sticky notes around their workspace with messages of recognition and appreciation. Another powerful category is professional recognition. These are especially valuable for those members who are motivated by professional growth and career development. Writing a letter of recommendation, or even a short recommendation on something like LinkedIn, upon completion of their service will have a tangible positive impact on members' post-service careers. To facilitate this, you may want to create a standard recommendation letter template that you can then personalize for each member moving forward. Similarly, you may offer to serve as a professional reference for a member after they complete their term of service. Providing learning opportunities also works well as a form of professional recognition. You may provide members with access to external trainings or workshops when feasible, or include them in internal sessions covering topics that are relevant or interesting to them. Now let's talk about public recognition, both internal and external types. We'll start with internal public recognition. This is a way to show recognition in a visible way that doesn't go outside of the organization. So you're amplifying your support and appreciation of VISTA members within the organization in a way that their trusted peers and colleagues can see, while still honoring their wishes to not be externally highlighted. These methods also demonstrate recognition as an organizational value to all team members, including staff. Ideas here can include highlighting the accomplishments or the growth of individual members on an internal office bulletin board or via a team or staff-wide Slack message, spotlighting a story of how an individual VISTA member overcame a challenge or a barrier, spreading the word via staff email, appreciating and recognizing a VISTA member during a staff meeting, or even hosting a VISTA member recognition party, either during or at the end of their term of service. And if you're going to host a party, I highly encourage you to invite staff, partners, stakeholders, and members of your organization's internal community to celebrate individual and collective impact. Another option for public recognition, of course, is to sing the praises of your VISTA members to your external community, including your supporters, stakeholders, and the larger community. Externally public methods of recognition help to demonstrate the achievements, successes, and value of VISTA members to your broader constituencies. Now, ideas here could include creating a social media post to highlight the impact of VISTA members at your organization. You could tag the member with their permission, even so that they can then share the post or story on their own social media to further amplify visibility. But be sure you rotate who you put in the limelight. You can also craft a short video compilation of staff and community members recognizing the contributions of one or more of your VISTA members. Or you can feature VISTA members and their work on your organization's website. You can even add a regular feature to your newsletter or the emails that you send to the board and your community members to rotate recognition of individual members. Again, be sure to confirm first that individual members are comfortable with public recognition and that they don't have any security or safety concerns before you shine a bright spotlight on them and their efforts. So before we close out our time together today, I have a few quick tips to recommend. First, be sure to recognize the contributions and successes of every member, not just your top performers. Also, it's important to recognize folks who are improving because it shows that you're paying attention to their progress. Ideally, this will inspire and motivate them to continue on this positive path. Do this individually with each member while also recognizing their accomplishments in front of others, again, if they are comfortable with that. This will help you make recognition part of your job as a supervisor or leader. The culture of your organization starts with its leadership, so set the tone and encourage an environment of recognition on your team. Now, I'm going to pass it back to my colleagues now to do a quick check about what we've discussed today.
Thank you so much, Aaron. This information is invaluable and incredible. And I do want to pause here, as you said, to do a quick check. You should see a poll open on your screen in just a moment. We'll be asking you to answer the question, when deciding how to recognize member accomplishments, which one of the following is essential to consider? And again, you can only select one. Is it A, how many times to integrate gratitude during each member's service year? B, how much time you can commit to acknowledging member accomplishments? C, how many people you can involve in appreciating members? D, how much the organization's budget allows for gatherings? Take a moment to respond. Again, please make sure to hit submit after you're done, and we'll conclude after that. Okay, we'll give you about 10 more seconds. I see a few more responses coming in, so go ahead and, if you haven't submitted the poll yet, go ahead and submit your response. Maybe 5 more seconds just to see if there's any last ones coming through. And we will go ahead and close the poll now. Thank you if you were able to respond. And we'll go ahead and reveal the correct answer. The correct answer is B, how much time you can commit to acknowledging member accomplishments. And that's simply because member recognition does not happen on its own. And as was mentioned earlier, you need to dedicate time to make it happen. So thank you very much for that response. And I'll pass it to Aaron to go over some important and useful recommendations that we encourage you to check out.
Thank you so much, Eric. So before we go, I do want to share some of these resources for further study on this topic. These are also included in your handout. But please note these are primarily about recognizing volunteers. And while in many ways this is different from recognizing national service members, I do think these resources contain some strong parallels and interesting ideas for you to consider. First up is Volunteer Recognition Ideas, 50 Ways to Show Appreciation from Mobilize. This is a deep dive into volunteer recognition with 50 different recognition strategies that you can potentially implement, including several that we've discussed today. Next is the Volunteer Recognition e-Tool Kit by Verified Volunteers. It walks you through 5 tools that you can use to recognize volunteers or your members at your organization. Then another web-based resource, a chapter on volunteer appreciation by Volunteer Pro. This defines volunteer motivations and provides examples of meaningful rewards you can offer. And finally, a fun quiz to potentially determine your own preferred method of recognition, which is hosted by Volunteer Canada. You can even give this 9-question quiz to members serving at your organization to help you match them with appropriate recognition methods. So I want to pause here and say thank you so much, everyone, for your time, attention, and participation today. It has truly been a pleasure being here. This topic is a favorite of mine, and as an AmeriCorps alum, I love any opportunity I have to connect with y'all. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to connect and collaborate with you today, and thank you again for having me here.
Thank you so much, Erin. I wish we had 3 hours to go into this topic, but alas, we did what we needed to in less than an hour. Before we continue, we'd love to hear what you think about this webinar. We love hearing your feedback and comments and recommendations. So please take just a couple moments, either now or soon after the webinar concludes, to click on the link in the chat, or it may already be open in your web browser, and please submit your feedback. We greatly appreciate it. So we have time for 1 or 2 questions. And Erin, one question I saw that came in earlier, I can't remember exactly when, but it was centered around frequency. You talked a lot about when to recognize member accomplishments. And I saw some sponsors in the chat said some of them do it annually, or they might do it every 6 months. But the question was, do you have a recommendation for either the frequency that sponsors and supervisors should recognize member accomplishments, or do you have a recommendation for a minimum frequency, for example, at least once a month or at least once a quarter?
That's such a great question, and it's such a tricky question too, because a lot of it depends on your capacity, your time, the type of work you're doing with your VISTA folks. At a minimum, I think, if you can swing it more than once a year, I think that's great, because again, it really reinforces that culture of recognition if you're doing it on a more regular basis. Even if you just aimed for once a month, I want to even just verbally express my appreciation and how much I'm grateful for them and the impact that they're having, or how I've seen them grow, or how I've seen them overcome those barriers. On a monthly basis would be terrific. Again, even if it's really informal. As far as the more formal recognition models, those really can be just once or a few times a year. I know they take a lot of time and effort, and we want to do them well. But really the short answer is, as often as you're able to do so without it becoming a stressor for you, or so much that it starts to then not ring as true or as genuine of, hey, I'm thanking you every time I see you, I'm not sure I believe you now. So I think that sweet spot is aim for maybe once a month, at least with some informal methods. And then especially if you're rotating through your VISTA members, if you're doing something once a month, that means you're keeping that spotlight on your VISTA members cooking throughout the year. And it's just different turns in the spotlight for the people on your team.
I think that's great advice, especially because, as you mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be just gigantic accomplishments. So if a VISTA member writes and gets a grant, that's incredible. They just got money for your project. But even just writing the grant is a huge accomplishment, because some people, like I'd never written a grant, and it's a difficult process. So as Erin said, whether it's a minimum once a month, or remember, VISTA members only serve 12 months, only 1 year. So the time frame by which you do recognize their accomplishments is likely to be different from when you'd recognize a regular staff member. But Erin, I think that's great advice.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Plus, just one other thought I had, Eric, is just the name check even can be terrific. When you announce, hey, we got that grant, make sure you mention the VISTA member who worked on it. So it's a way to slip in that aspect of, I'm pointing out their impact here as part of announcing something that's happened with our organization.
Absolutely. Always a great reminder to mention the person's name and that they're an AmeriCorps member serving with your project, because sometimes there's so many titles. They're an AmeriCorps member, they're serving in the VISTA program, they're serving at your project site. So just make sure to get that all in there so that it really highlights all the work that they're doing. And as Aaron said, the frequency is up to you, but I think once a month is probably a good way to start if you haven't started already. So let's go ahead and look at what's coming next. So in July next month, which is right around the corner, we'll be actually hosting 2 separate webinars, one for each of our audiences. So on Thursday, July 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern, we're having a webinar focused on VISTA sponsors titled Project Longevity, Sustaining the Work. And this webinar will help project directors really think about what they need to build a sustainability plan to keep important VISTA project work going after the VISTA project ends. So kind of that longer term sustainability lens. Then a week later, on Thursday, July 18th, also at 3 p.m. Eastern, we're having a webinar specifically for VISTA leaders titled Leading Days of Service. And this webinar focuses on helping leaders consider important steps necessary when actually implementing days of service, and it'll highlight some real life examples. So we look forward to having you join whichever webinar fits your position. So I'm going to end by thanking our presenter, Dr. Aaron Barnhart, for sharing with us today the great examples, the stories, the insight. I also want to give a huge shout out to our instructional designers, Bethany Dusablon, Elizabeth Floyd, and Cameron Greenup, as well as our producer, Stephanie Natoli at LSI. But we also want to really, really thank you for participating and all the great work you do for AmeriCorps and your organization. This concludes our webinar. Thank you so much for joining and have a great day.